Now, a lot of people are building this narrative that for some reason, the Silent Hill 2 remake has a worse atmosphere than the original. Guys, I don't think we played the same game. The Silent Hill 2 remake has some of the best atmosphere in any survival horror game. Roaming through the streets of Silent Hill 2 and just hearing the lying figures in the distance, or walking around in the dark hospital and hearing the noises of the nurses. Graphically, this game is very impressive, but the atmosphere is truly the icing and the cherry on top. It takes a lot for a horror game to scare me, and I truly mean that. I don't really get scared by horror games, so when a game like Silent Hill 2 Remake actually gets under my skin, that's how I know that the developers did a good job. Which leads into the camera perspective. So I'm seeing this game get a lot of hate simply for the reason that it's an over-the-shoulder third-person survival horror game. I'm glad that this was a third-person over-the-shoulder game, and the reason for that is because it gives us a new perspective on the game. Do you know how many times I've walked around a corner just for an enemy to jump out at me and completely catch me off guard? Or I'll walk into a room and there's a mannequin hiding behind a door and he jumps out at me? Having this game be an over-the-shoulder game doesn't make it worse, it just makes it different. So that leads me into the question of, does Bloober Team handle the dark themes well? As a lot of you know, Silent Hill 2 is a lot darker of a franchise than Resident Evil is, and Silent Hill 2 covers a lot of dark topics. We meet a character named Angela. Angela is a victim of a certain something because of her father, but Angela killed her father, and that's why she's here in Silent Hill, because she feels guilty for, murder. And then we have our main character, James. James receives a letter from his wife, Mary. She tells him that she's waiting for him in their special place in Silent Hill, but James is confused because he's saying that Mary died of a disease from 3 years ago. So how could she be in Silent Hill if she's dead? And that's for you to figure out. We also meet another character named Eddie, who I think is actually a lot more likable in the remake. Now, the thing with Eddie is he's a little crazy, and you'll discover that more and more as you play the game, but I think Eddie is meant to be a more likable character in the remake because they want the player to feel bad for him. Eddie is a character that was pushed around and essentially bullied, which causes him to do some things, and that's how he ends up in Silent Hill. And that leads me into the censorship. When this game first got revealed, people criticized the face models, and that's completely fine, okay? Criticism and hate are two completely different things. The censorship discussion and the censorship talk is completely stupid. Now, if you prefer the original character models, that's fine. But to say that this game is censored, oh, what? Because Maria has a strong jawline? I don't know if these people just don't go outside or what, but you do realize that there are women out there with strong jawlines, right? Like, that's not a man-only trait.
What?
Okay, now what about the puzzles? Because in my opinion, puzzles are one of the most important aspects in any survival horror game. I think the puzzles are amazing here. There was only maybe 1 or 2 times where I got stuck, but that was my fault because I was being stupid and I wasn't paying attention. A lot of these puzzles are completely expanded upon. Like there's a clock puzzle, which in the original game was just a simple little puzzle, but in the remake, you actually have to find multiple parts of the clock, which then opens multiple different doors. Or there's this little cube puzzle in the labyrinth where you have to turn it so you can, find the right door to walk through. And you have to circle back through this area multiple times, which makes you do this puzzle multiple times. There's a puzzle at the very beginning where you have to find multiple parts to get the jukebox working. You walk up to it and you're like, oh, okay, I probably just need to find the puzzle item. But no, it turns out that you need to find a button, you need to find the other half of the vinyl, and you also need to find a coin to get the jukebox working. This is a perfect example on how to make good puzzle design. You can also change the puzzle difficulty, which is nice. So if you're not a fan of puzzles, you can crank it down to easy, or if you want a challenge, you can crank it up to hard. The map is also one of the biggest upgrades in this game, but I think there is a negative with that, and we'll get to that in a second. The design of the map in this game is incredible for multiple different reasons. If you ever walk up to a door and it's completely locked, you don't have to worry about going back to that door later because you know that it's locked permanently, and it'll show you on the map. If the door is scribbled out, that means that it's locked and you can't go through it. But there are some doors that you'll walk up to and they'll prompt for you to put in a key item, and if you don't have the item, that's how you know that's a door that you have to visit later on in the game. And that leads me into the exploration. So a big positive about this game is that it's been heavily expanded upon. Bloober Team took every location from the original game and just made it bigger, and I think in a lot of ways that is a a great thing. The controls in this game are also really good. There are some downsides, which I'll talk about in a second, but for the most part, I love the way that this game controls. There's also a ton of accessibility options, and I think this is a huge W for this game. So if you want that classic survival horror experience where you don't want the game to tell you anything, you can do that. You can disable hints, you can disable icon pop-ups. When you're extremely hurt or injured, this red effect will pop up on your screen. You can also disable that as well. Now let's talk about the combat. I've seen a lot of people criticize the combat in this game, and while I can see where they're coming from, the combat can be a little clunky at times. There's times where I go to swing at one enemy, but then it auto locks onto a different enemy or someone on the ground. There's times where I go to dodge backwards and I still get hit anyway because the enemies have incredibly long, lunge attacks. There's also times where I get stuck in a corner or there's a very tight space and I'm getting smacked around because I can't see anything. I can completely understand why people are frustrated with the combat, but I gotta be honest, I love the combat in this game. I actually think that the combat is a lot deeper than people are giving it credit for. So for example, we have the lying figures, which are probably one of the easiest enemies to deal with. So these guys have a couple of attacks. The first one is they spit across the room, which can do damage to you. They also have another attack where if you're close enough, they'll do this spray burst that will also do damage to you. And then you have the mannequins, which are the most they're basically giant rats. That's exactly what they are. They're annoying as heck and they're just creepy. But the same thing with these enemies here. So when you attack one of them, they eventually do this little charge attack. But if you keep your distance far enough, they'll do a lunge attack, and if they latch onto you, they throw you into this animation where you have to mash your button to throw them off. Sometimes it does get annoying, and I did get a little frustrated at one point because it felt a little cheap. Like, why am I walking into a room and I'm getting smacked from an angle that I can't even see? And then we have the nurses, which are probably, I would say, one of the hardest enemies in the game, and they're also very tanky. I mean, there were times where I put like 3 or 4 shotgun blasts into a nurse and they're still alive. The bosses in this game are also incredible, and again, I wish I could show you guys, but again, I'm doing this for spoiler's sake. But every single boss fight in this game was incredible. I don't think there was a single boss fight that I didn't like or a single boss fight that I was frustrated with. And without a doubt, Pyramid Head steals the show in this game. Like, yeah, he has a cool enemy design, but man, Pyramid Head's presence in this game is just, it's good, man. There's even mods now for the game, which is funny. So if you go to the Nexus page, you can find all these different character mods, and there's other mods for weapon sway and whatnot. But now I really want to address everything: the censorship, the negativity, what I don't like about the game. I want to talk about it all, so I hope you guys are ready. Okay, so first I want to talk about what I really don't like about Silent Hill 2 Remake. Number one, the optimization on PC is hot garbage. It wasn't unplayable, and I think if you're planning to buy this on PC, you're gonna have a fine experience. You're probably gonna experience stutters, because I think everyone that's played this game on PC has experienced stutter issues, but it's not so bad to the point where it's unplayable. I mean, if you have a really bad PC, you're probably gonna have, really bad performance issues. Another thing I don't like about the remake is it's very slow to switch weapons. So basically, you can't switch your weapon as you're dodging. So if you dodge, you have to wait for your character to come to a complete stop before switching to a weapon. It's extremely frustrating when you're dealing with a very intense combat situation. You have to dodge, stop, and then you could switch your weapon. Now I want to address the criticism from the community, and I just want to make it clear that I don't agree with the criticism over this game. All the people saying that this game is, the W word, which I cannot stand, and all the people saying that this game is, censored and it's garbage and it's worse than the original, I'm sorry, but I disagree with you. People have been hating on this game since the beginning. They have been preying on this game's downfall, only for the game to sell 1 million copies in 3 days. Silent Hill 2 Remake is a masterpiece. It's an incredible game. I absolutely love it, and I don't agree with a lot of the criticism that people are throwing its way. And let me just say that this remake is incredibly faithful to the original. Don't let people tell you otherwise, because again, I don't know what game they're playing, because we're clearly not playing the same game here. Other than the camera perspective being one of the biggest changes, if you ignore the camera for just a second, it really is a very similar game. There's even some new Easter eggs, like if you glitch out the camera and if you go inside, I think it's the barn at the beginning, you'll find an Easter egg to the Silent Hill HD collection, which is awesome. I mean, the effort and detail that Bloober Team has put into this game really sets Silent Hill 2 as being one of the greatest remakes ever made. I would argue that it perfected remakes because it took an original masterpiece and just completely built upon it. In my honest and humble opinion, this is how remakes should be done.